So service-based rates is our rate methodology, essentially. It was created many years ago. I think it dates back to even 2005. And at that time, that particular rate methodology was state of the art, I would say. So the service-based rate is exactly what it sounds like, a rate based off of service need and services received. And for us in South Dakota, that comes into a daily rate. So there is an algorithm that gets to the service-based rate, and that algorithm is the A3 model. So if you've heard anybody talk about the A3 or A3, that is the algorithm for the service-based rate. So that algorithm, if you are all familiar with that template, are you or no? Let me see if I'm just going to try to look real quick. I see some heads shaking no. Okay, so the A3 model, again, is the algorithm. So it looks at acuity. So there are specific non-negotiable, meaning required, components of acuity off of the ICAP that go into the A3 model. Where someone lives and the home size is also a factor, as well as any additional service need. So thinking nursing, that type of thing. All of those go into this algorithm, and we call it the A3 model. And that is how the daily rate is projected. And that daily rate is a service-based rate. So this has been our rate methodology, again, for over 15 years. Our department and division have attempted to revise this rate methodology twice before. So since 2005, we have attempted twice before to revise our rate methodology. Both times it was unsuccessful for various reasons. In 2017, our state legislature created what is called Senate Bill 147. That Senate bill requires that every provider methodology be reviewed at least every 5 years. So we are within that current requirement to review our CSP specific rate methodology, which is service-based rate, again, off of the A3 algorithm. So the rate methodology work group, we put out an RFP and selected a national organization called Guidehouse to assist us through that process. That work will be kicking off yet this month. And our focus is specifically the requirements of Senate Bill 147. It is likely that because of the current status of our rate methodology for CSPs, that there will be other recommendations that come from that review in order to become more in line with best practice in rate methodology work. And so for those of you who are a part of that work, you'll be along that journey. Again, for those that are in the division team that are going to be part of that work, that'll be monthly meetings starting this month, going to the end of the year. The report that is due on Senate Bill 147 is due in November of this year. So our review of our rate methodology based on that requirement will need to be completed by November. So back to the service-based rate. So outside of the rate requirement, the rate review requirement, back to service-based rate. The annual rate setting is a process that the division does with budget and finance. We look at the various acuity stats in the A3 model to assess and confirm an individual's service-based rate for the next year. So as you guys might recall, if you were here on the team in like January and February, we talked about ICAP, making sure that the ICAP samples were validated so that we were using accurate data to project individual service-based rates. During that process of rate setting, the system is frozen so that no changes can happen that could impact the validity of some of the data and the projections. So that's why towards the end of this year, then we unfroze it. All of the SCRs could then be processed, those types of things. That's all connected to the annual rate setting process. And that annual rate setting process is that way because of our structure and algorithm for individual service-based rates. What questions do you guys have?
That was very helpful, Joey. So then my question goes, so you do that once a year, right? And
Yes.
then an SCR comes in or a new ICAP occurs. Is it recalculated then, or does it stay that rate for the whole year? How does that all play in?
That is a fantastic question. Thank you, Barb. So at annual rate setting, let's say my rate is set at X amount of dollars, but then I have a service change, or I maybe could mean I moved residents, or I needed more or less support, right? So then when the agencies submit the SCR, that SCR process is vital to ensure that our service-based rates remain accurate based off a person's acuity. So that is the tie of SCRs to service-based rates. So when an SCR comes in, that rate changes based off the changes on the service-based rate. And then we do on our end to project budgets and growth in the system and all those things based off of the data in the system, which is why making sure that we're being timely with SCRs is vital. Making sure that SCRs are being completed when changes are made at a provider level is vital, because all that stuff is then connected to the bigger picture of our overall system budget. Does that help answer?
Yes, now I'm going to take you to the next bunny hop though. So, because sometimes providers will say to me, well, I didn't worry about submitting that timely because it doesn't affect the rate anyway. So are there some services that the rate isn't as quickly affected, or a certain amount of change?
Yes, so there could be minor changes that might not actually end up at all impacting that individual service-based rate.
So, I mean, I just think that's something that I always think they're using it as an excuse because they forgot, versus really that they're doing it because it didn't change the rate. It's
even if it doesn't change the rate, it should still be completed.
Accurate.
So
Yes.
I cannot stress that enough, that if you hear from a provider that they made a change, but it doesn't impact the rate, they don't need to do an SCR. That is absolutely false, and one must be completed. Good questions. What else?
So sometimes we get a request from an agency to help come up with a service-based rate for somebody before they come into the setting, which, you know, you can't have an accurate one, but can you talk about that for a minute?
Well, I didn't know that was happening. I guess if they're wanting to know, gosh, if Joey starts services and this is her ICAP and these are the support needs that she has, a ballpark average rate would be this, then that would be yes. So then what you could do is I would recommend, if you get that request, to work with Liliana, and she can assist in running an example through the A3, again, that algorithm, to see what a projected rate might be. We would never want to say, yep, 100%, this is this person's rate. And those instances of that ask should be minimal. That is not a typical request.
And I guess I'd like to follow up. This is Barb, that working with Julie Hand, excellent guidance back to one of my agencies that they have access to the model and they should be trained on how to walk through that so that they aren't asking us to do that, Julie, JD, that they then have the tool that they could do that at any time, if they're looking to move someone or make these changes. So I thought that was good guidance that Julie Hand gave me to work with one of my agencies. And interestingly, they knew. I think they were trying to get me to give it back to them so they could say kind of what Joey said, oh, well, you worked this out for me and this is the rate. Well, no.
Yes, they have that. They have access to that to project as well. Other questions? Okay, I would say if you think on it and you have additional questions, please let me know. We are very hopeful and optimistic that we will be able to make some changes to the CSP rate methodology that'll be very vital to people supported in our system. And so those changes are very important.